A pleasant day to everyone. For this lesson, I'm going to discuss about the marketing channels and supply chain management. So in the end of this lesson, you student will definitely describe the different types of marketing channels, even the roles that they are playing in marketing strategy. And also, you can outline the major channel strategy decision, the concept of channel management, conflict, and even the cooperation. And you can also identify and describe the different vertical marketing system and the roles of logistics and supply chain management in the overall distribution strategy. And you can also identify some of the major components of physical distribution system and compare the major modes of transportations and discuss also the role of transportations, intermediaries, combined transportations modes, and warehousing in improving physical distribution. Now, in this lesson, we have these things. First is distribution, marketing, channel or the distribution itself, the logistics, the supply chain management, and the physical distribution. So once we talk about distribution, this is the movement of goods or services from the producers hanggang ito ay makarating kay consumers. And once we talk about marketing naman or marketing channels or distribution, this is a way of management or the businesses about having a system of marketing institutions that enhance the physical flow of their goods and services. So ito yung sistema na meron si business para mas lalo siyang makapag-distribute ng kanilang product from the production hanggang ito ay makarating kay consumers. And also, so once we talk about system, ito yung hindi lang ito about doon sa computer, not just about the system ng IT or whatsoever. System, ibig sabihin sistema na meron sila. Let's say, the scheduling, the staffing of people, hanggang ito ay makarating ng port, hanggang ito ay maibenta sa consumers through the use of different retail or warehousings. And now, let's talk about the logistics. So, pag sinabi naman natin logistics, again, this is a coordinating of the flow of information about doon sa product natin or doon sa goods na binibenta natin para po ma-inform yung ating mga channeling of distribution. So, pag sinabing channeling, sila yung, let's say, yung mga agents, sila yung mga middleman. So, yun. Pag sinabing logistic, this is definitely about the information about the goods or the product, kailan pwedeng ma-deliver, kailan pwedeng matapos yung product, kailan pwedeng ma-serve, hanggang kailan ito maibenta kay consumer or pwedeng maibenta kay clients. And next, we have the supply chain management. So, in supply chain management naman, this is the activity of the businesses para po makontrol niya yung pagbili, yung pagproseso ng product or ng services nila until ito ay magkaroon din ng pagkocontrol doon sa delivery nila. In raw materials, again, these are the product that definitely transform into product na magiging available sa market para ito ay maging consumable ng ating mga consumers. And then, when it comes to physical distribution, this is a very broad range of activities that aims to be more efficient movement of finished goods from end of production line to the consumer. So, pag sinabi physical distribution, we are not just referring with the place kung saan ito pwedeng maibenta or kanino ito pwede bilhin. It also referring with the online or yung mga tinatawag natin na e-marketing staffs or e-marketing distributions. Now, we also have the different types of marketing channels. Next is the types of marketing channel. So, dito, iisa-isahin natin, classified by the consumer goods, the business goods, and also the services. So, una na dyan yung tinatawag natin na direct selling. In direct selling, we have two things to consider. First is the direct channel and also the direct selling itself. So, pag sinabi natin direct channel, so this is the movements of goods directly from the producer to the ultimate user. And in terms naman po ng ating business goods, this is came from the producers to the business purchase. So, pag sinabing, again, direct channel, wala na siyang pinagdadaanan pang ibang channeling. And then, once we talk about direct selling naman, this is the strategy designed to establish direct sales contact between the producer and final user. So, ito po yung importanteng options na maibigay natin sa ating mga clients o sa ating mga consumers. Next is the channels using marketing intermediaries. So pag sinabing intermediaries, again, may mga middleman tayo or may mga middle agents tayo or mga distributors kung tawagin tayo para mas lalo mapalapit yung product natin, yung service natin doon sa mga gustong mag-avail ng product natin or consume no, ng ating mga product. So, una na po dyan is the producer to wholesalers, to retailers, to consumers. So, marami siyang pinagdaanan. So, producer, let's say si wholesaler, napunta kay retail hanggang kay consumer. So this type of channeling, this is definitely a traditional channel for the consumers. Specifically, if we're talking about the consumer's goods. And then, it can also give small producers access to hundreds of retailers. Kasi nga po, ang kausap lang niya is yung wholesalers. And then, also give small retailers access to wholesalers specialized distribution skills. Bakit? Kasi po, lalo na kung ang nagiging wholesaler mo ay malapit lang din sa'yo. So, automatically, you will have an access doon sa wholesaling na kung saan mas magiging favorable doon sa retailers natin in terms of prices, in terms of mode of delivery, and so on. Next is the producer to wholesaler to business user. So, ito naman yon. Okay, this part. So, we have the producer, wholesaler, until the business user. So, normally, ito yung mga tinatawag natin na industrial distributor. So, this is the intermediaries in the business market that takes little to goods. And then, for number 3, we have the producer to agent, to wholesalers, to retailer, to consumer. So, marami siyang pinagdaanan. So, from agent, so this part sa last part ng ating consumer goods. So from producer, mayroon pang ahente, nagkaroon sa agent, nagkaroon siya ng mga pwedeng pagbagsakan ng product ni producer. So different wholesalers natin. So sa wholesalers naman, may mga kalapit siyang mga retailers. So retailer, may mga consumers doon sa kanilang neighbors. In here, so this is the common market served by small companies. Bakit? Kasi nga po, hindi pa sila, let's say, kilala sa market. So that's why may mga agents sila na nagpupush ng product nila para maibenta sa market. So yung agent, they have the basic functions to bring the buyers and sellers together. Yung agent din natin can have or cannot take possession of goods but does not take little. And the fourth one is the producer to agent, to wholesalers, to business users. So, ito yan. So, producers, agent, wholesale, business users. So, ang nangyayari naman po dito, nagkakaroon tayo ng mga tinatawag na representatives. So, representative from what manufacturers? Okay, so yung manufacturers representative na ito, they are the intermediaries who represent the manufacturers of related but non-competing products and receives a commission on each sales, provides an independent sales force to contact wholesale buyers. And also, yung mga ibang representative din natin, they have an agents wholesaling intermediaries that represent manufacturers of related but again not competing products and receive a commission of each sales. So normally kapag kami mga agent, okay, nakadepende yan, no? Nakadepende kay producer kung magkano yung magiging commission ni agent. And also si wholesale naman, dahil nga let's say si wholesale hindi siya pwedeng makadirect doon sa producer, ayan, nagkakaroon din siya ng pag-abot ng token kay agent para nga naman po makakuha no, ng mga product from the producer. Kasi may mga tinatawag tayo mga exclusivity lang. Lalo na po kung ang product ay ito lang dapat or sila lang dapat yung nag-offer. So, yung mga agent, napakalaking tulong nila to have the so-called interventions between the producers and the wholesalers. And then the last is the producers to agent to business users. So, kung mapapansin, isa lang yung ahente natin. Okay, so this this, this process dito sa ating second part from the business goods. So, independently owned wholesalers takes little to the goods and common in transaction with large unit sales in which transportation is a small percentage of the total cost. The third channel is the dual distribution. So, pag sinabing dual distribution, mamimili lang siya sa tatlo. It's either indirect or direct, or it's either direct or selective. So, dito, ang movement ng product through more than one channels to each the firm's target market and then used to maximize the firm's coverage in the marketplace. So, dito rin, nagkakaroon din ito ng tulong para po mas lalong maging cost effective, no, doon sa mga firms natin in doing their marketing efforts. And then, for the fourth one is we have the reverse channel. So, pag sinabi natin reverse channels from client to business. Yan. It's because the businesses need to provide certain services, lalo na po kapag si clients or si customers ay nagkakaroon ng experience na gamitin yung product. Example, nagkakaroon siya ng problem to the product, ganyan. So, nagkakaroon tayo ng tinatawag na reverse channeling. So, again, this is a channel designed to return goods to their producers. Kasi nga po, let's say in terms of the specification, hindi nagtutugma doon sa kanyang binibili or kinakailangan. And then, dito rin, no, nagkakaroon tayo ng increase of importance in terms of rising prices of the raw materials, increasing availability of recycled facilities, and even the passage of additional anti-collusion conservative laws. So, madalas ginagamit yung reverse channels in the so-called recalls or repairs. And next, we have here the factors influencing marketing channel strategy. So again, pag sinabi natin channeling, this is how we can distribute our product. So in here, we have the market factors, the product factors, organizational factors, and the competitive factors. So unahin na po natin yung market factors. So sa market factors, ayan, meron tayong tinatawag na short and also long channel. Same thing with the product, organizational, and also the competitive factors. So, in market factors, nagkakaroon tayo ng short channeling or yung distribution natin ay hindi ganun kadami or hindi ganun kalawak kasi nga po, specifically if we're talking about business users, so sila lang yung pagdidistributan natin ng product natin. So, yung channel na gagamitin natin ay kukonti lang. Unlike sa ating consumers, marami siya. That is definitely a long channel. Marami siyang pwedeng pagdaan ng channeling bago ito makapunta kay consumers. And also, in terms naman po ng geographically concentrated, may mga product na kung saan sila lang yung nag-a-avail ng product na ito. Okay, yung local lang ng product na ito, or let's say yung community lang, sila lang yung community na nag-a-avail. So dahil sila lang concentrated, so automatically yung channeling natin is directly to this community or directly to this location. So in terms naman po ng disperse, ayan, so dahil nga let's say marami kang branches, yan, nagdi-disperse, madaming consumers, no, na naghahanap ng product mo. So, yun, nagkakaroon ka ng pagkakaroon ng branch out. So, dahil nagkakaroon ka ng branch out, mas dumadami o yung tinatawag natin na channeling. And next is about the technical knowledge. So, kapag ka-short channel, again, most of the time, ito yung mga business user or yung mga customers natin is part of a certain industry. So, dahil nga dahil nga business ito, no, mas nagiging regular yung pagbibigay natin ng services sa kanila, unlike doon sa mga consumers na kung saan hindi na masyadong required. Why? Because may mga channeling na pwedeng tumulong or pwedeng mag-assist sa kanila. And then in terms of order, ayan, alam naman natin kapag ka-business, they are buying bulk of orders, unlike itong mga consumers natin, ginagawang par retail or let's say yung mga tingi-tingi. So small lang yung pagbili ng kanilang mga product or yung pag-avail ng kanilang services. Next is the product factors. So syempre kapag po perishable yung goods, pag sinabing perishable, nabubulok, so automatically in terms of our channel, that is short. And then mas nagiging complex the more na nagiging complex yung produkto, okay, the more na expensive yung product, kailangan ma-deliver ito kaagad doon sa final user o doon sa ating mga kliyente. However, kung ang product po ay durable, okay, hindi naman masyadong mahal, kumbaga yung produkto ay masyadong generic, no, sa market. So ang pinaka nagiging characteristics nito is definitely can have the so-called long channels. And in terms naman po ng organizational factors, dito in terms of sa ating short channels, yung mga manufacturers has adequate resources to perform channel functions. However, kapag naman po syempre malalayo, madami pinagdadaanan, nagkakaroon tayo ng lack of adequate resources to perform the different functions of each channels. And then in terms naman po ng ating product line, ayan, so yung ating product line in terms of short channel, mas nagiging malawak, mas nagiging broad, okay, doon sa magiging clients natin or consumers natin. Unlike po doon sa long channel, mas nagiging limited yung product line natin. Bakit? Kasi po, syempre, yung wholesales na pinupuntahan ng product natin, yung retailer, hindi lang naman po product natin yung binibenta nila. Marami rin silang ibang product na binibenta or yun offer sa markets. And then, in terms naman po ng channel control, so dahil nga po short channel yung pinag-uusapan natin, no, sa ating mga clients or businesses, mas nagiging kontrolado natin lahat. Okay, bakit siya importante? Kasi we have the deal, we have the agreement, no, dito sa ating mga clients. Unlike naman po dito sa ating long channel, so specifically we're talking about consumers, hindi na siya masyadong nagiging importante. Bakit? Kasi nga po, hindi na natin siya kontrolado. Why? Because they have different channeling na. Meron na siyang ibang pinagdaanan. So, bahala na sila kung ano yung contract nila, bahala na sila ng agent, bahala na sila ng wholesalers. Basta once na nabigay mo yung product kay business, that's it. Yun ang yung pinaka-importante. Then, kapag ka na-redistribute ito sa iba, that's not part of your control. And then the last is the competitive factors. So, in competitive factors, in terms of short channels, yung ating mga manufacturers feel satisfied with marketing intermediaries performance in promoting product. However, ayan, dahil nga po madagal, let's say madami siyang pinagdadaanan pa, so ang tendency, yung produkto natin hindi na siya napopromote ng maayos. Why? Because let's say sa delivery pa lang, medyo late na yung delivery natin. Yung delivery natin, imbis na gagamitin mo na kinabukasan, hindi mo magamit kasi hindi pa dumadating. So, nagkakaroon tayo ng tinatawag na dissatisfaction. Hindi lang yun. Even din po yung, let's say, yung condition ng product. Ayan, isa rin yun sa nagkakaroon ng dissatisfaction yung ating mga consumers. So, in this sense, nali-less competitive yung ating business. Kasi nga po, there's a lot of channel. So, ang nangyayari doon sa product natin, hindi na siya nakakapag-produce to promote, no, the business. Because the product itself is not good nung dumating na sa ating mga consumers. Next, how can we determine, no, the distribution intensity? First is the intensive distribution. In intensive distribution, this is the distribution of product through all available channels. So, ito makikita mo sa sari-sari store, makikita mo sa grocery store, makikita mo sa palengke. So, kahit saan pwede mo makita yung goods na ito o yung products na ito. So, common, ito yung mga, let's say, mga toiletries natin, yan, na kung saan, makikita mo kahit saan, no? And also, we have the selective distribution. So, pag sinabi namang selective, since by the word selected, ayan, namimili lang sila or limited numbers lang of channels. Why? Because depended ito doon sa capability ng consumers to buy the product. So, saan mo siya ilalagay? So, obviously, doon sa magiging target market mo. And also, it depends on the so-called privileges, no, ng isang locations. So, one of the example is the Nike. So, kung makikita nyo si Nike, hindi siya nakalagay lang sa isang market na kung saan, let's say, yung mga usual. Let's say, sa malapit sa community natin. So, ito ay, if I was not mistaken, sa BGC ito, na kung saan yung alam ng Nike na maraming potential siyang customers na bibili ng kanyang produkto. And then, we also have exclusive distribution. So, pag sinabi exclusive distribution, sila lang yung pwedeng mag-distribute ng product. Okay, so one of the examples is the Yamaha. So, si Yamaha, ang kanya lang exclusive distributors is si Motor Trade. Wala na pong iba. Now, by having this kind of exclusive distributions, nagkakaroon tayo ng tinatawag na legal problems. So, yung legal problems nito is the closed sales territories and the tying agreement. So, pag sinabing closed sales territories, this is the restriction of the distributors to certain geographic regions. So, kung papapansin ninyo, yung motor trade, okay, hindi siya po pwedeng magkakatabi or hindi siya po pwedeng magkakapitbahay. So, meron lang po dapat tayong tinatawag na different territories. So, kung meron ng motor trade dyan, sa area na yan, bawal na dyan sa ibang area naman. So, that is what we call closed sales territories. And then, in terms of tying agreement naman, this is the requirements na kung saan hinihingi no, sa mga intermediaries to carry the item other than those they want to sell. So, dahil nga tying, when tie up sila, wala lang silang pwedeng i-market, kundi yun lang yung product na yun. Now, paano po maiiwasan no, yung mga problems na ito? Siyempre, kailangan natin ng tinatawag na channel captain. So, si channel captain, they are the one who are definitely need to be dominant and control no, the entire marketing channel. And this kind of captain, o yung mga leaders natin, they need to be coordinated with different segments. They need to be committed not just on their jobs but also doon sa mga channelings, and definitely they need to build trust between the channel's members. Now, why we need to have again the channel captain? Syempre po, para ma-avoid yung mga tinatawag natin na conflict doon sa channel or what we call channel conflicts. Bakit po nagkakaroon ng conflict? Obviously, the misunderstanding of both parties. So, para ma-lessen ito or para mawala ito, ayan, meron tayong tinatawag na channel captain. So, in terms of conflict, yan, meron tayong mga different categories. First is the conflict in terms of vertical conflict. So, pag sinabing vertical conflict, this occurs amongst members at different level of the channel. Pag sinabing different level, example, wholesale, retail, yun. That is what we call different level. Okay? Nagkakaroon ng problem ito in terms of delivery, in terms of pricing, difference of the specification of the products, and so on, even the condition of the product. So, yun yung mga tinatawag natin na vertical conflict. Again, with different level. Second is the horizontal conflict. In horizontal naman, this is the disagreement among channel members at the same level. So, example, lahat sila ay wholesaler. So, si wholesaler 1 tsaka si wholesaler 2, they have a certain conflict. Bakit? Let's say, they have different agent. Ganyan. So, iba yung sinabi ng agent niya doon sa agent ng isang wholesaler. So, the information become mistreated. So, in this thing, yan, nagkakaroon tayo ng conflict because of the informations. And then, for the last is the gray market. So, once we talk about gray market naman, this is unofficial. Yan, unofficial distribution channel. Ibig sabihin, they are not tying up. So, kailan ito nangyayari? Like, for example, merong palang memo na kung saan magta-tie up yung dalawang business or isi-sell ng distributor yung product natin. Example, balita pa lang. Because of this balita, ayan, nagkakaroon tuloy si distributors ng kumpiyansa na pwede na siyang magtinda without the official, let's say, documents na pwede na siyang magtinda. So, yun, nagkakaroon tayo tinatawag na gray market. Next is we have the vertical marketing system. So, this kind of system is to improve the distribution channel in terms of having a cost effectiveness and also having a cost efficiency. So, by doing this thing, okay, ang nagiging benefits nito is to improve the controlling and even the coordinating by the different steps in their distribution and even doon sa ating mga production process. This can also may lead to the development of economics of scale. So, pag sinabing economics of scales, madami, bulto yung pagbili. So, pag maraming binibili, maraming pwedeng i-deliver, mas nakaka-save tayo ng pera. Bakit? Kasi isang transportation lang, isang transactions lang. And then, marami na yung product na dumarating or marami na yung product na nabibili. And also, it may let the manufacturer expand into profitable new businesses. Bakit? Kasi nga marami bibili. Marami kang pinapadeliver. So, ang tendency, nagiging profitable sila at mas magiging mataas yung opportunity nila to expand and also to reach yung mga pwede pang maging wholesaler. In our BMS, okay, we have here the 3 categories. First is the corporate. So, once we talk about corporate, we are just dealing with the single owners, operates the entire marketing channel. May mga businesses na kung saan sila na lahat yun. Okay, sila na yun nag-produce, sila na rin yung nag-deliver, tapos si wholesaler, part na rin ng services na businesses na makapag-deliver si wholesaler kay retailer, ganun din si retailer until kay consumer. So that is what we call corporate. And then for the next one is we have here the contracting. So pag sinabi naman pong contracting, this is the coordinates channel activities through formal agreement among participants. So obviously our participants is part of our distribution channel. First is the wholesaler sponsored voluntary chain. So in here, the wholesaler has formal agreement with retailers to use a common name and to purchase the wholesalers goods. So example na lang dito is yung tissue paper na nabibili natin, let's say sa SM. Okay, so nakatatak dyan yung bonus, yung mga bonus goods o yung mga bonus na product. Nakatatak basta SM bonus, ganyan. So yung nakalagay na yan is actually made by Joy. So yan, meron tayong nakakontrata yun, no? Na example, si Joy hindi siya mabili. So si Joy gagawa siya ng mas substandard, example lang, na tissue paper na kung saan ibibenta niya kay SM, tapos si SM, balagyan niya ng pangalan na as na kanya yun. So that's what we call wholesaler sponsored voluntary chain. So by having that, ayun, kumikita si Joy. Kasi nga po, yan, nakakapagbenta si SM ng kanyang product. And then, we also have the retail cooperative. So in retail cooperative, this is the retailer establish a share wholesaling operation to help them to compete with the chain. So, pag sinabing retail, ayan, lahat ng mga different retailing natin. Let's say, yung mga convenience stores, sari-sari stores, mga ganyan. So, even yung mga, let's say, mga bakery, ayan, mga nag-offer sila ng mga goods that are not really a bread. Example, mga coffee. They are part of our retail. And then the last is the franchise. Well, we are very much aware with this. So, pag sinabing franchise, this is a wholesaler or retailer agrees to meet the operating requirements of a manufacturer or other franchisor. So, if you are under franchise, ayan, nakakontract yan na kung saan may mga fees na kailangang bayaran at may mga alituntunin na kailangan sundin. And then, for the last PMS is we have the administered. So, in administered naman, this is the achieves channels coordination when a dominant channel's members exercise its power. By the word administered, ayan, ina-administered niya, okay, through having different coordinations with different part ng ating channeling or ng ating distribution. Next is the logistics and supply chain management. So, para po maging effective yung logistics natin, it must have a proper supply management chain. Ayan. So, pag sinabing management, it must be manageable. Ayan. Ibig sabihin, time to time, okay, kayang i-handle ng mga taong nakaupo dito. And then, since this is manageable, we can control a lot of activities. Example, yung pagbili, paano yung proseso, at kung paano ito ma-deliver. And another thing on how this logistic become effective is that delivery through which raw materials are transformed into product and made available to final consumers by the date itself, by the price itself. Ayan, so everything must be manageable. So in here, meron tayong tinatawag na upstream and also the downstream. Again, pag sinabi nating supply chain, ayan, supply chain is a complete sequence of suppliers and activities that contribute to the creation of delivery of merchandise. So, in supply chain, ayan, makikita natin from raw materials, ito yung upstream to downstream. From raw materials, suppliers, manufacturer, distribution, until mapunta kay consumers. Okay, so once we talk about upstream, so ito yung pagkuha ng raw materials, ni suppliers. So, suppliers, yung manufactured ito. And then, in terms of downstream naman, yung manufacturer came from the raw materials na galing kay suppliers into final goods. So, pag naging final goods na ito, in terms of downstream, pwede niya na itong i-distribute sa mga different channeling niya until ito ay makarating or maibili ni consumers. Next, we also have here the physical distribution. Yan, in physical distribution, we have here the service requirements, communications and order processing. We also have the production, the warehouse location, inventory management, transportation, and also how to handle those materials. Let's start with the service requirements. In this one, we are referring definitely to our customers. How can we give service to them? So this is the states, the goals, and define acceptable performance for the quality of service a firm expect to deliver to its customers. So specifically, we're talking about the standard. Okay, so this is the designers assemble other physical distribution components to meet the standards as the lowest possible total cost. Second is the communications and order processing. So this is directly affects firms' ability to meet customer service standards and also includes the 4 major activities. First is conducting a credit checks. Example, if the industry or the clients are billing a certain machines that takes a lot of millions of peso, yun yung kanyang presyo. So automatically may mga different payment scheme tayo dyan. And then, keeping a record of the scale. So, time to time, everything must be recorded para po meron tayong babalikan na status kung ano ba nangyari dun sa product na to or kailan ba ito na-purchase, kailan ito nadaan sa maintenance, and so on and so forth. And also, making appropriate accounting entries. So, dito naman, since we're talking about let's say, frequent order, ayan, time to time, kailangan natin masubaybayan yung transaction na ginagawa natin kay clients. And also the location orders, the shipping them, and also the adjusting inventory records. Lalo na po kapag ang client natin ay meron siyang schedule of delivery. So, dahil may schedule of delivery ito, kailangan nating asakasuhin or kailangan natin intindihin kung ito po ba ay meron pa or laman pa ng ating inventaryo. In terms ng ating raw materials, kailan po proseso yung product ni clients or kailan natin ito dapat ma-deliver sa kanila. Because again, meron tayong mga dates to be considered. Next is we have the production. So by the word productions, again, raw materials, proseso, until final goods. So sa productions natin, they cannot do production without inventory, without the raw materials. And also, we have here the warehouse location. Yung location natin na to, dapat ito ay accessible. Lalo na po kapag we're dealing with the highways, dapat hindi masyadong malayo kasi lalo na kapag ang product natin ay perishable goods. In warehouse, automatically, we're talking about the location wherein we can store our goods and also where can we distribute our product. Next is we also have here the inventory management. Napakadaling malaman or napakadaling tukuyin ng status ng ating product based on the inventory. So sa inventory natin, this is how the companies must be balanced, maintaining enough inventory, obviously to meet the customer's demand with incurring unneeded cost of carrying excess inventory. So, okay lang naman po magkaroon ng excess kung ang goods ay hindi naman perishable or kung yung goods na ito ay palagi namang in-order ni clients. However, if the goods have the, let's say, expiration, ganyan, wag na tayong masyadong magbigay pa or maglaan pa ng excess kasi po hindi naman din ito mabibenta. And also, ayan, para ito ay ma-manage, no, in terms of our cost, we have here the 3 things to consider to use, no. Meron tayong tinatawag na just in time or the JIT. Yung just in time natin, tsaka lang tayo bibili ng, let's say, ng materyales kapag kakailangan. That's what we call just in time. So example dyan is yung mga, example, nasiraan yung motor, ganyan, walang available na pyesa, o tsaka lang siya orderin. So that is what we call just in time. And also, we have here the RFID technology. So, yung RFID natin, meron tayo niyan, yung mga nagdadaan ng NLEX, STX. This kind of technology that uses a tiny chip with identification information that can be read by the scanner using radio waves from a distance. So, this kind of technology, yan, malaking tulong ito para po malaman natin kung nasa na ba yung product natin, malapit na po ba sila sa area natin, or medyo matagal pa bago sila makarating sa atin kasi medyo malayo pa. So, yun, malalaman natin kung nasaan yung product natin. And for the last is the vendor managed inventory or the PMI. Ito normally nakikita natin ito sa, let's say if you are doing online shopping, ayan, makikita natin kung ilan na lang yung item na available, yan, for a specific product. And then kapag in-add to cart and then check out natin, malalaman natin kung nasaan na siya. Yan, kumbaga may tracking tayo. Okay? Kung nasa ang hub na ba ito, kailan na mag-deliver sa atin, what will be the expected date to be delivered, and so on. And then next is the transportation. So in transportation, we have the 3 classes of carriers. We have the common, the contract, and the private. So once we talk about common, this can be provided obviously of different transportation services as for hire carriers to general public. And for the contract carriers, we have the for hire transporters that do not offer their services to the general public. Kumbaga may exclusivity lang. Itong mga trackers na ito, ang kanila lang pwedeng i-deliver is yung goods galing sa businesses na ito. So meron silang specific contract. And then we also have the private carriers. So by the words private, ayan, so si business mismo yung nag-transport ng kanilang goods. Now, in terms of transportation, we have here the different mode and also the speed of different mode of transportation, and how can we be dependent on their schedule, the frequency of the shipment, the availability of different location, and even the flexibility on handling the product, and even the cost of this transportation mode. First is the railroads o yung mga tinatawag natin na mga tren. So, this is most efficient way for moving bulky commodities over long distances. In rail, the speed and also in terms of meeting the schedule is average. Why? Kasi wala naman dyang traffic. Okay, so depende na lang yan doon sa scheduling, no, ng mga nagbababa ng mga bagahe natin. And also in terms of frequency of shipment, medyo mababa kasi nga po kumbaga yung nagiging commodities natin, siya, akyat baba. Kaya mas nagiging lower. And also in terms of availability with different locations, so may mga station lang na pwedeng babaan or specific location lang kung saan pwede i-unload yung product natin or i-unload yung mga bagahe. And then in terms of flexibility, which is high. Why is it high? Sa tren, may mga naman yan, may mga cargo spaces yan. Kaya high po yung kanilang pag-handle ng ating mga commodities. And when it comes to cost, it's also average. Why is it average? Is it because the bulk, yung dami ng commodities, or yung bigat ng commodities? So that's why, in terms of cost, that is just an average. And the second mode is through water. So, ito yung mga barko, yan, ginagamit, yung mga cargo vessels kung tawagin. In here, there are some barge lines carry bulky or low unit value commodities such as grain, lumber, or steel. Basta yung mga malalaking produkto. Yan, kinakailangan talagang gamitan ng mga vessels. And also, in terms of speed, syempre slow niyan kasi they are traveling by the sea. And then in terms of meeting schedule, it's an average. Why? Kasi po, kapag ikaw ang nagpapadistribute, syempre you need to consider yung speed, no, nung pag-transport. In terms of frequency of shipments, ayan, very low. Why is it low? Kasi nga po, kapag ka nagpa-deliver tayo through yan nga, yung mga vessels natin, madami, bulto. Okay, so dahil bulto ito, hindi na tayo madalas nakaka-order o hindi na tayo madalas nakakapag-ship. Kasi nga po, meron pa tayong available. So, kailan na lang tayo nag-ship? So, depende na lang yun sa level of our inventory. And also, in terms of availability in different location, limitado lang. Syempre, kung saan lang may port. And in terms of flexible, very high. Kaya talaga nilang handle kasi nga po, meron silang mga cargo location or cargo spaces. In terms of cost, it's very low cost. Okay? Kasi nga po, cargo siya. So, ibig sabihin, maraming siyang pwedeng ilagay doon at hindi lang naman po yung produkto mo ang nakalagay doon. Marami ring nakiki-ship, no, doon sa cargo na ito or sa cargo vessels na ito. And next is the truck. Ayan, alam naman natin yan, no? Mabilis ang mga truck talaga. Okay, so by having this kind of speed, yung pag-meet ng deadline or yung pag-meet ng schedule is very high. So, nagkakaroon na lang yun ng problem kapag, syempre, traffic, ganyan. And also, in terms of frequency of shipments, ayan, palagi itong ginagamit time to time. Kaya nga po, may mga cargo companies tayo. Kasi nga po, in terms of distribution, kinakailangan talaga natin ng truck. Kasi nga po, mabibili sila. And in terms of availability in different location, very extensive. Ayan, bakit? Kasi po, kukonti lang yung mga lugar na pwede silang mag-park. Kaya, kukonti lang yung lugar na kung saan po pwede sila mag-transport because of some coding, no, na meron tayo sa transportation system. And in terms of flexibility, average, kasi nga po, syempre gulong ito, okay, so depende yon sa kondisyon ng mga truck natin. Example, if that is beverages, dapat fridge yung itsura, no, nung truck na ito. And then, in terms of cost, syempre high yan. Kasi nga po, marami siyang binabayaran, no? Hindi lang naman po yan gas. Even yung mga toll fees, even yung mga tao, yung mga the driver, even yung pahinante niya. So, marami siyang kailangang bayaran. So, that's why in terms of cost, that is high. And then, we also have here the pipeline. So, in our pipeline, naman, this is pipeline. Ang dinideliver naman ito is yung mga natural gas and oils natin. O, even yung mga water. Yan. Basta lahat mga ginagamit na ng pipeline. Okay, yung speed niya is low. Why is it low? Because of the force, no? Depende yan sa forces. And then, in terms of meeting the schedule is high. And then, in terms of frequency naman is high again kasi continuous lang naman yan. And then, in terms of location, limited lang kasi hindi naman po lahat pwedeng hindi naman po lahat ng kalsada pwedeng dumaan at lagyan ng pipeline. So, meron lang tayong mga restriction na kailangan natin sundin. And in terms of handling, very low kasi nga po, yun, depende yun sa substance ng mga liquid na tinatransport using the pipeline. And the cost is very low. In terms of air, yan naman yung mga planes, yan, very fast. We all know about that. In terms of meeting the schedule, very high also. Frequency, average. Why is it average? Kasi po, yung cost, kailangan din natin intindihan yung cost natin. And then the location is also average. So, depende kung nasaan yung mga airports natin. Okay? And in terms of handling, very low kasi kinoconsider dito yung bigat, no? Nung bigat ng commodities. And in terms of cost, yan, very high. Kasi nga po, very fast yung kanilang pag-deliver, no, ng mga products or ng commodities natin. Next is how to handle the materials. So, in handling the materials, we have the so-called system. First is the unitizing. In unitizing, okay, so this is the combining as many packages as possible into each load that moves within or outside a facility. So, kinoconsider kasi natin dito yung gas, okay, at saka yung syempre yung bayad sa tao. So, as much as possible, kung ano yung kakayanin, no, ng truck natin, yun yung kailangan natin i-load. Okay? And then, in terms of containerization, this is a combining several unitized loads into a single well-protected load for shipments. So, yun, sa container, sa mismong truck. Kung makikita ninyo, no, if you are watching movies, mga ganyan, makikita natin yung mga kada container, meron silang mga paleta. Yun, yung paleta na yun, this is served, no, to protect the commodities. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening.